I was born blind since birth, and that in and of itself meant that, the society in which one operates is not designed for you. And when I joined the legal profession, this was no exception. Many of you before I come to media accessibility, I would like to set the context in a minute or two, which is why I think this is important. So many of you in the audience must be lawyers and legal professionals. Can we kind of have a show of hands to know how many such people there are, and someone can tell me? 60%. So which is how many people roughly? 80, 90 people. Okay, fine. How many of you have had legal interns or associates with disabilities working with you? Okay. So which is about 10% of the audience, right? Which is a very small number, all said and done. And you people are still change makers, right? Committed to social justice. So it's not a surprise that in your group, this percentage is 10%. Amongst the average lawyers, say dyed-in-the-wool kind of corporate lawyers or litigators, I would imagine the number would be even smaller. So in 2017, I went to intern for then Justice U.U. Lalit, who later became Chief Justice of India. And I was the first blind legal intern that he had. And he worked with the then Chief Justice, who was J.S. Kehar, to ensure that I was given a fair number of 4 to 5 files every day in accessible formats that I could access and read and make notes of on my own. And that was the first time that the Supreme Court began putting in place a system for persons with disabilities who were working for them. Then I went to Oxford from 2018 to 2020 on the Rhodes Scholarship and got the opportunity to really understand from my peers and by living there, what kinds of opportunities can be opened up for persons with disabilities if we are able to create the right infrastructure and support systems. On coming back, I had the good fortune of clerking with Dr. Chandrachud, who's of course a CJI now. And he was extremely supportive of this cause. At that time, he was heading the E-Committee of the Supreme Court, and I know that Agami had an interface with him in that role. And he, once said to me that this fight is as much yours as it is mine, right? So he kind of put his full weight behind putting in place systems, not just for me, but more broadly for supporting persons with disabilities. And that really emboldened me to pursue disability rights related reforms on a larger scale. So after my tenure for him ended, I began to think of accessibility more broadly, not just in terms of the court system, but also digital accessibility. Right? So how do we make digital platforms accessible? Like a Paytm or a Google Pay or, a Netflix. Both their platform and their content. And then media accessibility, right? So how do we make entertainment content accessible? Which I would like to know from you actually. So in your assessment, what does it take to make any say if you're watching something on Netflix, what does a person who's visually impaired or hearing impaired require to be able to access that content? Anyone? That's right. So who's that? Priyamvada. Shivangi, sorry. So audio description, what is audio description, by the way? Yes. Absolutely. So the visual aspects of what you are seeing on the screen, for instance, the background, what people are wearing, if one person is running from place X to place Y, whatever the visual aspects are, a description of that. That's audio description. And subtitling, as you know, is a textual depiction of the dialogues, right? For those who can't hear and also for those who don't understand the language, which is where Bridges' work becomes important. But I'll come to that in a minute. And also captioning, right? So a textual description of not just the dialogues, but also other things like the sound of a bell ringing or a bottle of water falling down. Those things also have to be textually described for those who can't hear what is happening on the screen. And when I started thinking about media accessibility, my path intersected with that of Professor Brij Kothari's, who was working on this from a very different angle, which is from the perspective of expanding reading literacy for people with low literacy levels, and how same language subtitling and captioning can be pathways to expand that access. And one of the things I decided to take up was litigation, right? Because although we have the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act that's existed since 2016, 7 years now, and it says that the appropriate government has to frame standards for all ICT, for all electronic media content to be accessible. No such standards have as yet been notified, and producers aren't doing this. I mean, the odd movie might come with audio description, but it's not the default. And, one producer which was coming up with a big ticket movie was Yashraj Films with Pathan. And they've been known to be traditionally resistant to the idea of making their content disabled friendly. And I'm being very nice here. So we took that up and got a favorable order from the High Court. There were 4 petitioners, 3 of whom are visually impaired. There's a law student at the National Law School, Bangalore, Professor Sanjay Jain, who teaches there, and a hearing impaired person from the National Association for the Deaf. Because we wanted to cover the whole range of issues that persons with disabilities have. Not the whole range, I shouldn't say that, but to the extent we could. We went to court, we got a favorable order with respect to the OTT release of the movie Pathan, which was the individual-centric focus of the litigation, to make a particular movie accessible, which could serve as a prototype for the industry. And then the second was the broader goal of setting in motion a dialogue on formulating standards to make this the norm and the industry-wide practice. So I'll now hand it over to Brij to share some reflections on how we came together and what the journey has been like.
Just in Manish's style, I'm only going to give you 10 seconds. Okay? Close your eyes, and I'm going to take away one skill from your beautiful brains. Okay, I'm going to take away the skill of ability to read. That's it. How has your world changed? Okay, I don't have too much time, so I'm going to stop there. And hopefully some thoughts did come how the world has changed for you. Now imagine 600 million people in the country are living that reality. 60% or more are girls and women. That is the challenge that in 1996, we thought we could solve. And today, with Rahul's help, I'm confident we are going to do it in 1 year. And it's not an empty just statement. Okay, can you just pull up the slides, please? Yeah. Okay. For me, the key guiding principle has been really simplicity. A problem that you want to solve at a scale of 1 billion people has to be solved something very simply, right? So I'm going to show you a sample of a movie, I think most of you will know this, with same language subtitling, okay? It's not subtitling, and it's not captioning technically, but those distinctions we'll leave for today. But let's call it same language captioning or same language subtitling for today. Rahul, just move to your left a little.
Okay. Further? Oh, no.
Can you put the audio?
Okay. That's fine? All right.
आप में से कितने लोग साथ साथ पढ़ रहे थे, जो पढ़ सकते हैं हिंदी। किसने कहा था पढ़ने के लिए, एज इन जगदीप स्टाइल? लेकिन आप पढ़ रहे थे। तो इमेजिन एवरी डे a billion people or more watch 3 hours of television. They watch mostly 90% of it is movies and serials and cartoons, etc. Automatically उनकी पढ़ाई हो रही है। सोचिए, 2 घंटा रोज अपने आप ही प्रैक्टिस होती रहेगी। कुछ आप सीखेंगे स्कूल में, थोड़े बहुत अक्षर ज्ञान होगा, आप घर जाएंगे वो आपकी प्रैक्टिस तो होगी ही। So how can anybody in the country remain a weak reader is the question. Right? Now, in science and evidence and all that, we have too much of it and we know we can solve it. पर उसको 25 साल हो गए और 25 साल में प्रोग्रेस हुई, थोड़ी बहुत स्टैंडर्ड्स बने, एक्सेसिबिलिटी स्टैंडर्ड्स फॉर टेलीविजन बन गए, हाफ द कंटेंट हैज टू बी शोन विथ सेम लैंग्वेज सबटाइटलिंग, लेकिन उसका इंप्लीमेंट नहीं हो रहा है, जैसे कि राहुल ने कहा। राइट? सो देयर आर इश्यूज ऑफ इम्प्लीमेंटेशन and of course quality implementation. I'll show you the next clip.
जहां पार्टी देखी बिन बुलाए चले आता है। मान ना मान, मैं तेरा पठान। पार्टी पठान के घर पे रखोगे तो मेहमान नवाजी के लिए पठान तो आएगा और पटाखे भी लाएगा।
Okay. This is actually mission accessibility's success. कि उन्होंने पठान पे ये करवा दिया। यशराज फिल्म्स को सू किया, 3 blind people and 1 deaf petitioners। एक बार यशराज फिल्म पे हो गई बात ये। अब क्या था? Now everybody in the industry potentially is a target, right? तो बात, अब मैं थोड़े कुछ कोर्ट के केस सीन्स भी दिखाऊंगा, लेकिन आप उसके पहले एक ऑडियो डिस्क्रिप्शन का भी एक छोटा सा सैंपल देख लीजिए।
Yes.
अब एक हेलीकॉप्टर एक पहाड़ी पर बने बंकर और हेलीपैड की तरफ उड़ता है। अब जिम के बेस के अंदर कॉम्बैट पीपीई सूट और हथियार लिए कुछ लोग अंदर आते हैं।
क्या था वहां? वही जो अब यहाँ है।
पठान मास्क उतारता है और जिम पर पिस्तौल तानता है।
Now if you think about it, ये मूवी किसके लिए एक्सेसिबल हो गई? विजुअली इम्पेयर्ड एंड द ब्लाइंड? और किसके लिए एक्सेसिबल हो गई? Okay, so people who are hearing impaired and who know how to read, of course, that's the assumption, will also be able to enjoy this. The other feature that they would want is a Indian Sign Language insert of a video at some point, right? Now, these are all accessibility features. And I'll come to it, that if these can be framed under a rights framework, which means everybody, there's a diversity of needs here. Even in the disability rights community, even among the hearing impaired, there's a diversity of needs. And so how can you serve that diversity of needs for every individual? So it has to be under a rights framework and a choice architecture. Okay, at the end of the day. आपको उसको टेलीविजन पे भी करना है, फिल्म्स पे भी करना है, OTT प्लेटफॉर्म से भी करना है। Okay. Our approach was from reading and literacy. Now, this is something that the entire film industry is missing, as how this enhances. Maybe we are thinking somewhere that this is taking away something. Maybe. Okay, at least the industry thinks so. Lekin they are missing the point. Actually, all the weak readers in the country, 600 million, they have a very different perspective. उनको कुछ मिल रहा है इससे। So just a small sample of what Kumkum Kumari in Bihar thinks of something like this. ठीक है। आप सोच रहे होंगे कि ये तो एक ही है लड़की जो ऐसा कुछ करे, हमने शायद सिलेक्टिवली कुछ वीडियो ले लिया, लेकिन वी लिटरली हैव नाउ हंड्रेड्स ऑफ दीज वीडियोज वेयर ऑलमोस्ट एवरीबडी, पेरेंट्स, टीचर्स, चिल्ड्रन in the rural area say, no, we love this content with the same language captioning. I'll tell you another use, for example, for audio description, which we may not think about. We may think it is for the visually impaired. Okay? How is it useful for those who are not visually impaired? Any ideas? Language learning. बिग टूल. आपको कभी कोई डिस्क्राइब करने को कहे कि मूवी में क्या हो रहा है, बताओ किसी को, इतना आसान नहीं है. तो कहीं ना कहीं आपकी भाषा का सुधार तो होता है उससे, राइट? सो यू कैन लर्न लैंग्वेजेस. सो इफेक्टिवली what we're saying is that something that is an accessibility feature, initially we think it's for a group of 70 million people. Some people call that small, but obviously not. Lekin it is good, and depending on different contexts, you will choose what is good for you. But effectively, all of us will leverage every accessibility feature at some point or the other for ourselves or for our children. All of us somewhere are on the spectrum from non-disability to disability. It's a matter of age sometimes. Potentially, we are all going to benefit from all of these features, right? So effectively think of these tools as universal tools for all of us. So therefore, the design also has to be universal. अब आपको बताता हूँ कि US में closed captioning होता है. Why do they do closed captioning? For the deaf and hard of hearing. Okay? As simple as that. Netflix had to be sued to put English subtitles on English cinema, by the way. And Netflix lost the case to the National Association for the Deaf. And therefore, Netflix started putting English subtitles on English films. And today, Netflix realizes that ये तो बड़ा अच्छा है, ये तो international market के लिए बहुत अच्छा है. Similarly, the industry itself will realize that it's good for everybody. So I'm just going to show you a few of the clips from the court case that Rahul has led. Sorry.
The remedies are concerned, it is his submission that at the time of certification of the films itself, the CBSE ought to insist that such features would be mandatory for the purpose of implementing the provisions of the RPWD Act under rules.
So, thanks to Justice Pratibha Singh, this was amazing that she literally gave the solution here, that the Central Board of Film Certification, every time a film comes for certification, will have to have certain accessibility features. Now it is up to us to define which accessibility features. And I said a few already, right? So all of those should be available at quality at the time of certification. Automatically, 2,000 films a year will become enabled for accessibility. अब वो फिल्म्स पे हो गया तो वो फिल्म कहाँ जाती? 90% of the content goes on television. Same content goes on OTT platforms. So literally, there is another deeper, simple solution here. Actually, the government is framing standards for films separately from standards for television, separately from standards for streaming platforms. We think that is strategically a mistake to think like that. It'll become very fragmented. The only standard you need is make all content accessible at source, at the beginning itself. And then people can turn it on. इतनी बहुत सी simple बात है, लेकिन हमको time लगा to arrive at this strategic solution. But effectively, this is what we're pushing for in policy now. I'll show you another clip.
It is his submission that at the time of
circulated to the stakeholders, have everybody's comments, and with the help of law ministry, we're going to, and of course the concerned department.
What kind of timeline are you looking at?
Sir, ma'am, generally the subordinate legislations take 6 months, but we'll try to do this one very well.
Draft guidelines, not rules right now, no? So guidelines you don't need, it's not a subordinate legislation.
But we'll show it to law also, ma'am.
How long will it take?
We'll try to do it at the earliest.
At the earliest, inverted commas, not acceptable.
for Rahul to get a Delhi High Court judge to say something like that to a joint secretary of the Ministry of Information Broadcasting, that कि आपके पास इतना time नहीं है, आप ऐसे नहीं कर सकते. I mean, do you see the power shift here? I mean, crazy, right? Another clip on the power shift.
One last aspect, my lady. In the meantime, till these guidelines come into force, like as happened with Pathan, could we work out some sort of a system? Like, for example, movies are coming, like, say, Tiger 3, Jawan, there was a movie called Khumar. So I'm receiving a lot of complaints from people who are not able to access them now. So till the guide... So
let's look for the final solution, and in any particular film, if you feel, you write to the producer. If the producer doesn't agree, then you have an application.
Yes, if my lady could just record that and give me liberty. Yes.
You can work.
I think I'll give the mic back to Rahul. If you would like to ask him anything, it is really his story. We have supported from the background, but it is really his story and mission. I would like to say mission impossible that they've achieved, but mission accessibility has achieved this. So thank you so much, Rahul. Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Brij, and you're giving me too much credit. I think much also depends on the sensitivity of the judge and the strategic inputs that we've gotten from you. I'd just like to close with two thoughts, and then if Brij has any closing remarks. One in terms of what the challenges are, we've kind of covered how far we've come and what distance we've traveled. But when it comes to accessibility work more broadly, a couple of challenges are, one, the pushbacks that you face. So in this case also, the industry came back with pushbacks like, for the benefit of 0.1% of the population, do we want to inconvenience 99% of the population? That was literally what they said, which was, of course, shot down by the judge, but that is the thinking that's prevalent. The cost would be too much. This would be too complicated. But because we had that Pathan prototype, we were able to show that it cost 6 lakh rupees to do it. And for a movie which has a production budget of 300 crore, it's whatever, like 83% of the total budget, So you can really show that it's pocket change for them. Same with respect to complexity. And the percentage issue is also looking at it the wrong way. But this is the kind of resistance we unfortunately need to combat. And people say that, why do you take up legal advocacy? You should find collaborative solutions. Look for positive examples. Of course, those are important. But it's sort of like the debate between Ambedkar and Gandhi about producing social change, and sort of what kind of restructuring would you need in society to do that. Sometimes you can't just work on the fringes. You have to take on powerful interest groups which have a vested interest in keeping the status quo as it is. And that requires resources, right? It requires money, it requires, time and energy, and that's difficult. Our organization suffers from a lot of financial precarity, if I'm being honest. So that's also something one has to find solutions to collaboratively. And the take-home message that I'll sort of close this with from my end is, what Sachin said about how the Ganga was formed by Bhagirathi and Alaknanda coming together. So it's kind of when different causes align that the synergistic impact can be quite powerful. Thank you.
And from me, the closing comment, I guess it was said at the beginning as well, but it's really the confluence of causes. It took a long time, but I've now realized that it's not about just coalition building, but it's also bridging causes. And sometimes we don't think about could be so powerful. In 1 year, what they have achieved, what we couldn't for 25 years, is phenomenal. Okay? That's my first point. My second point is on strategy. You might think that we're obviously in the, fighting this together and etc. Actually, strategically, I'm with the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. I support these them to achieve what these troublemakers are asking for. So in a sense, I work with the ministry and say, hey, आपको तो sue किया जा रहा है, आपको नहीं, मतलब आपकी policy को. लेकिन we have some ideas. हम किस तरह से इसको implement कर सकते हैं आपके साथ मिलके. So a lot of our strategy inputs that actually go to Rahul, exactly the same strategy inputs go to the Ministry of Information Broadcasting. So we really try to maintain strategically this neutrality, so to speak. But of course, our hearts are very much here. Thank you.